valuable FD.
Good evening and welcome to Prime Time News here on TV1. You're with me, this is Kapage, bringing you the news for News First, the voice of the people. Let's start off by taking a look at your headlines.
Trade unions and mass organizations protest against the budget. Professionals threaten to protest if unjust taxes are not lifted. President stresses the need to increase the electricity tariff.
ජනප්‍රිය නොවන තීන්දුව ගන්න තියෙනවා. ඒ ගන්න තීන්දුව නිසා අනාගතේ හොඳ වෙන්න යනවා.
Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna Trade Union condemn president's policies.
කොළඹින් ඡන්ද ලක්ෂ දෙකක් ගන්න බැරි වෙච්ච රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ අද මේ රටේ ජනාධිපති වෙලා ජනතා පරමාධිත්වය පිටුපාලා මේ රටේ තියෙන ජාතික සම්පත් විකුණන්න කටයුතු කරනවා.
Indian smog makes its way to Sri Lanka. Election Commission ready to call nominations for the local government election.
Now in a top story, trade unions and mass organizations protested across the country on Thursday.
Public and private sector employees representing multiple fields protested on Thursday, and their main theme was for the budget to be defeated within the parliament. Employees attached to the Sri Lanka Insurance Corporation protested opposite the Sri Lanka Telecom head office in Colombo, and Sri Lanka police said they should refrain from marching. Thereafter, trade unions from both Sri Lanka Telecom and Sri Lanka Insurance Corporation protested opposite the Fort railway station.
Last year, 10.41 billion rupees was sent to the treasury. That money can be used for the welfare of the people. However, they're trying to sell it to racketeers. We urge the Ranil Rajapaksa government to put an end to their habit of selling assets. President Ranil Wickremesinghe should refrain from selling national assets. Over $40 billion were sent off overseas via secret and false invoices by businessmen. Recover that money.
Trade unions attached to the SLPP also joined the protest. Junior staff at the Colombo National Hospital protested from morning to noon.
The aspirations of the people are not represented in Parliament. Though you manage to pass the budget, we will not allow it to be passed in society. We will not allow the sale of government institutions.
Thereafter, the group protested opposite the Health Ministry.
The price of 100 grams of sprats is 200 rupees and a kilogram of rice is 230 rupees. I only managed to buy 5 kilograms of rice with this month's salary. How can a family of 4 survive like this?
Staff attached to the Labour Department protested opposite the Labour Secretariat.
Our salaries are not sufficient to even travel to and from work. We need a transport allowance. Inflation reached 80% and we need an allowance for that. Our message is hands off state institutions and stop oppression. The government is trying to sell off profit-making government institutions, including the state banks. We are trying to amend the labour laws. This taxation is unfair. They have limited the right to live.
Development officers and other state workers protested opposite the Set City Pier in Battaramulla.
If Ranil assumes he can do what his uncle did in the 80s by suppressing the workers, he is wrong. The people will respond.
Protests took place opposite state universities on Thursday against attempts to do away with free education and seeking the immediate release of Vasantha Mudalige, the convener of the Inter-University Students' Federation. This is the protest that took place opposite the University of Sri Jayawardhapura.
We will never allow the Ranil Rajapaksa government and the corrupt politicians to privatize education. Free education belongs to the people and they have no right to do away with it. You are wrong to assume that you can crack down on the student movements by detaining the student leaders.
A protest took place opposite the Open University in Navala. University teachers also joined the protest.
The president was appointed on merit. The student movement will stand against any attempt to do away with education and healthcare. This is not a movement that can be stopped. If you think you can win by detaining Vasantha Mudalige, you are wrong.
Protests organized by trade unions and mass organizations were held across multiple areas. A protest was held at the Gaul bus stand on Thursday evening.
After bribing MPs and ministers with fancy dinners at hotels, they will pass this budget. We would like to tell the Ranil Rajapaksa government that we will build a voice of the people that will weaken those in parliament.
Another protest demanding an end to suppression and an inflation allowance to state, semi-government, private and estate workers was held in Walasmulla.
We want to tell the current president that we will not allow his joint government with the Rajapakshas to burden the people. The working class of this country need economic accountability. We will continue our struggle until that is achieved.
Another protest took place opposite the Anuradhapura bus stand.
Ranil's plan is to sell the country wholesale. He is implementing this plan. We will not be able to live in the future. Daragale will not back down in the face of threats posed by Ranil.
Intellectual professionals convened in Colombo and broadly discussed the proposed tax amendments. The Inland Revenue Bill, which includes the proposal to levy tax from 6% to 36% on personal income of more than 100,000 rupees, is scheduled to be debated in Parliament on Friday.
If Ranil Wickremesinghe wants the revenue to be reduced, prove it by reducing the number of cabinet ministers. How can he increase the tax revenue by imposing tax on state workers? Resignation is the only option you have at the moment. If not, as university lecturers, we will commence an island-wide strike action. We will start it after our token strike from the 13th of next month, if solutions are not given. Once a doctor works for an year, he receives a salary of 12 months from the government. But once these tax amendments are passed, we will only get the salaries of 10 months. We will have to pay the taxes that is the equivalent of 2 months' salary. They will be able to collect only 8 to 9 billion rupees by taxing the state worker. This is a country where more than 700 billion rupees was succumbed to scandals. In a country like that, they are trying to squeeze 8 to 9 billion rupees from professionals. What we are saying is create an environment where we can pay our taxes. A government must have the ability to tell the IMF that they can't do as they say because the people can't bear it. That is a responsibility of the government. If not, we can hand over the Parliament's responsibilities to the IMF. This is like a ship that is occupied by pirates. Make reforms to the parliament. We will provide our support in doing that. Even though they passed the budget, it needs to be implemented at the ground level. We guarantee, as the working class, we will not allow these proposals to be implemented.
Convening a media briefing, the Federation of University Teachers Associations expressed displeasure regarding the proposed tax amendments.
When the country is in dire straits, we expect the authorities to bring justice to the corrupt and those who misuse state wealth and others who have wronged the country. Do not bring in other issues without first completing this task. What are we paying taxes for? Where does this money go to? You have to make this clear through a proper tax policy. That is a government that champions the people's trust. But until now, we have not experienced such a thing. We don't see anything like that. If we admit that universities are essentials, in order to increase the quality of our universities, we need lecturers of higher caliber. If this tax policy is lending a severe blow to that, this is a huge issue. We request the government to amend this tax policy. Introduce a tax policy rather than this unacceptable, unjust policy. Amend this policy to empower and protect the professionals of this country.
Now moving on with the news, the Sri Lankan Parliament today, the 8th of December, passed the budget for the year 2023 following the third reading. 123 votes were cast in favour while 80 votes were cast against it. MPs C.V. Vigneswaran and M. Velukumar abstained from voting.
යෝජනාවට පක්ෂව ඡන්ද 123යි. යෝජනාවට විපක්ෂව ඡන්ද 80යි. වැලකී සිටි ගාන සංඛ්‍යාව 2යි. වැලකී සිටි සංඛ්‍යාව 2යි. ඒ අනුව 20යි 23යි විසර්ජන 50 කෙටුම් පත 3 වනවර කියවා සංශෝධන සහිතව සම්මත කරන ලද බව දන්වනු කැමැත්තෙමි.
Sri Lankan President Ranil Wickremesinghe told Parliament on Thursday that electricity tariffs will have to be raised despite it being the unpopular decision.
The cabinet announced twice that the electricity tariff will be increased. The people cannot bear this burden anymore. Although the rulers do not understand this, the people are extremely disappointed. The people are in hunger. And I would like to request you to openly state that the proposal to increase the tariff will be withdrawn. It is proposed to establish an energy supply committee by taking over the power of the energy ministry to the finance ministry. Privatization is a serious national security issue. This is similar to Gorbachev's dissolving the Soviet Union. As of October 31st, the CEB was at a loss of 112 billion rupees. We estimate the loss to be 152 billion rupees by the end of the year. The committee report states that the government must retain the ownership of the solar power plants and the hydropower plants. If there is an attempt to mislead the public based on personal views, we will not be involved in those committees. I never mentioned that the CEB was making a profit. Listen to what I have to say. I said the CEB made a profit for October and we need to follow the process for at least another 6 months. Thereafter, a decision can be reached. I did not receive any report on privatization. I have messaged him on WhatsApp and sent the report on the 28th of November. Everyone knows that we need to restructure. Just because you couldn't do it back then, please don't try to derail this attempt. It took 9 years to change a comma. Acts were passed and no support was given. Now they are trying to move against the act that claims to increase efficiency. We are to make another loss of 152 billion rupees. We have to locate another 300 billion rupees. If there is a drought, we will need another 420 billion rupees. If it rains, it will be 352 billion rupees. If there are floods along with the rains, it will be 295 billion rupees. So how do we recover this money? The government does not have any revenue. Are we to print money? If that happens, the rupee will further depreciate. negotiate. Are we to increase VAT? That would lead to another issue. The third option is to increase the tariff. We can go for power cuts, but I do not accept that. Examinations are to take place in January and February. Unfortunately, we will have to make unpopular decisions. But that would make tomorrow better. We are here because we did not take unpopular decisions. I prepared the PUCSL Act and I am aware of the powers it has. I am not sure why people are being misled. I need to meet him based on several complaints. He said he will not allow a tariff hike. He does not have power over the economy. He is the chairman of Trillium. Trillium uses a lot of electricity. It is not an easy amount. When the tariff increases, his cost increases. He should have said he is the chairman of Trillium and the tariff hikes affect him, and therefore he does not agree to raise tariffs. The engineering union also says there is no need to increase the tariff.
දැන් මම දැක්කා එන්ජිනියරු සංගමේ කියලා තියෙනවා මේක වැඩි කරන්න උවමනා නැහැ කියලා. දැන් අපි දන්නවා තියෙන අඩුව. මම එතුමාලට එකක් ඉල්ලනවා. දැනට මේ මට තියෙනවා දිලුම අමුණුගම රාජ්‍ය ඇමතුමා එව්වේ ලියුම. මෙතන තාම අනුමත කරලා නැති විදුලි බලයේවා. 100 megawatts offshore wind power plant in Norechole, $321 million. 500 megawatt offshore wind power plant in Hambantota, $1.4 billion. 100 million solar park, Buffalo Island, Batticlaw district, $68 million. 250 megawatt wind power plant, Dutch Bay, Putlam, US $204 million. I would ask them first to pass this and then pass their resolution against the increase of electricity tariffs.
Sri Lankan President Ranil Wickremesinghe told Parliament that it is possible to appoint a Parliament Select Committee to investigate those who led the country to bankruptcy if Parliament agrees to do so.
In 2001, when I was the Prime Minister, Norechole was suspended. After the government was defeated, the new government wanted it positioned. Those who did it are no longer here and have gone into retirement. We spoke with India and Japan about the construction of 2 LNG power plants. After the government changed, what did they do? They did not abolish the agreement and wanted it. First, it was offered to New Fortress in the USA. Thereafter, it was offered to China and Pakistan. India, Japan, the United States, China and Pakistan are all on the same plot of land. It would be surprising if it didn't lead to a world war. The only missing nation is Russia. One place was offered to the 5 most powerful nations. Now they want me to solve it. We don't have anything. Don't write any more letters. I will not open that file again.
ප්‍රධාන බලවත්තු පහකට ලෝක හැමතැනම හැප්පෙනවා. දැන් මේක විසඳන්න කියලා මට කියන්න. අන්තිමට LNGත් නැහැ මොකුත් නැහැ අපිට මෙතන.
මේ ප්‍රශ්නේ නිර්මාණය කරේ කවුද?
Who created this issue? The Institute of Policy Studies said that the issue aggravated because of certain wrong decisions. Some officials and some politicians who made these wrong decisions roam free. When Basil Rajapaksa was delivering the budget speech, he said Sri Lanka will have to go for a structural default. Ajit Niwad Cabral misled the country. He said $18 billion will come in a month. $10 billion in January, followed by $8 billion. No action has been taken against them. I request you to appoint a presidential commission, investigate and prosecute the wrongdoers.
පරීක්ෂණයක් තියලා ඒ වැරදිකරුවන්ට අදාළ විදියට දඬුවම් දෙන්න කියලා අපි ඉල්ලා සිටිනවා.
I can appoint, if the House agrees, I can appoint a presidential commission inquiry or otherwise have a select committee, whichever you want, because House also has power to have a select committee. So you all come on a select committee, we have nothing here. So you all decide on that.
Honorable,
I don't think there's anything to hide. Our system had lot of structural defects which got triggered off by reducing the taxes. And I think my predecessor, the former president, has accepted that. But let's go into it and see what has happened and what the structural defects are, because we must remedy them most.
If he has the interest to do it, then he can, and there is no obstruction. However, there is no faith that the whole parliament will agree to it. Most of the MPs here belong to that group. There is no change in that. Only a few agree with that. Appoint a presidential commission. Then you do not need the consent of others, including the parliament. Those who committed economic crimes used the president as a bridge in their journey. That is what the Crow said recently. He said this is an opportunity for those who could not even step out. He is clearly stating that you are the guardian of the Rajapaksa clan. His comments also made it clear that you are only protecting the rogues and engaging in dealings with them. You are also prepared to work with them in politics.
Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna trade unions that supported Thursday's protests criticized the president's actions.
6.9 million people voted for Gotabaya Rajapaksa in 2019 against the sale of national assets. They created a patriotic government. Ranil Wickremesinghe, who couldn't even win 200,000 votes, is president and is betraying the mandate by trying to sell national assets. We wish to tell all the politicians that we will not allow them to sell their assets. All the trade unions will step out and drive away this government. The Peruvian president has been arrested after being impeached by parliament.
There was high drama in the South American nation of Peru on Wednesday, which ended with the country's president Pedro Castillo being arrested on the streets by heavily armed police as crowds of people blocked any attempt by him to flee the country. President Castillo has been held on charges of inciting rebellion after he attempted to prevent himself from being impeached by trying to dissolve parliament, impose a nationwide curfew and install an emergency government. But Peru's Supreme Court, Attorney General and Ombudsman declared Parliament's dissolution to be illegal. The Prime Minister and 4 senior cabinet ministers resigned from Castillo's cabinet, leaving him politically isolated. Parliament then went ahead and overwhelmingly voted to impeach him. Vice President Dina Boluarte was then appointed by Parliament to succeed him, becoming Peru's first female president. Castillo's call for the military to support him against Parliament backfired, the army chief resigned, and the military issued a statement declaring their allegiance to Parliament. As rumors swirled that he was trying to flee the country and seek refuge in Mexico, crowds surrounded the Mexican embassy in Peru's capital, Lima. As Castillo left the government palace, police swooped in to arrest him and took him away to the city's police headquarters. Castillo's 17-month-old presidency had been engulfed by allegations of corruption and awarding contracts to those in his close circle. 2 earlier attempts to impeach him had failed. His approval ratings among the people had plummeted due to skyrocketing cost of living in Peru.
The National Election Commission on Thursday said that nominations for the local government elections will be called for during the final week of December. The National Election Commission Chairman, Attorney Nimal Punchiheva, told Newsfirst that members for local government institutions must be appointed before the 20th of March 2023. After the accepting of nominations for the local government election, the date of the election will be announced.
Civil groups filed a complaint with the Human Rights Commission of Sri Lanka today, the 8th of December, citing that the BMICH had decided to cancel its reservation for a Human Rights Day celebration scheduled for Saturday the 9th, despite making the necessary payments.
Human Rights Day celebrations are scheduled for Saturday. We booked the BMICH and made the payments. We made all the preparations. The guest speakers are BASL President, President's Council Salia Peris and Professor Arjuna Parakuma. Many civil activists will address the event and there will be no political representation. We hope to present the messages from various international bodies. Despite that, today BMICH says they cannot provide the venue and decided to return the money. We see this as a conspiracy of the Ranil Rajapaksa government.
Now in some breaking news just in, the Sri Lanka's Education Ministry has decided to declare Friday the 9th of December 2022 as a special holiday for all government and government-funded schools. The decision was made after consulting the Department of Meteorology and Disaster Management Center on the present weather situation. Now, coming back to that breaking news, the Ministry of Education of Sri Lanka has decided to declare Friday the 9th of December a special holiday for all government and government-funded schools. Now, this decision was made after consulting the Department of Meteorology and the Disaster Management Center on the present weather situation in the country.
Newsfirst, main sponsor.
25% for 2 months, 25.5% for 4 months. Valuable FD.
අයිවන් සතුටින් ඉන්නේ වයරින් කරලා වයරින් කිරුවේ Eslon Polycon යොදලා.
For your safety and the protection of the wires used in networking and AC wiring, Eslon Polycon cable trunking.
Welcome back to the news. The air quality across multiple cities and towns in Sri Lanka had dropped to unhealthy levels.
Sri Lanka's air quality was highlighted as unhealthy by airquality.lk on Thursday. The AQI in Colombo and many other cities were listed as over 150, which is in the unhealthy range. The reason for the drop in air quality was evident in Vent to Sky, which depicted the flow of pollutants from India to Sri Lanka. Newsfirst engaged in a special field report on the situation at 10 a.m. on Thursday.
I'm currently reporting to you from opposite the Berry Lake, where the smoke is clearly visible behind me, and it is currently 10:30 a.m. in the morning. Now, according to the statistics, the level is at a very unhealthy level, which even has the possibility of posing health risks for the people.
The smog in Colombo was experienced since Tuesday. The National Building Research Organization said that the present windy conditions are forcing the flows of pollutants from India to move to Sri Lanka, resulting in smog. The most affected areas are Colombo, Gampaha, Mana, Vaunia, Kegol and Jaffna. The air quality index in Gampaha town was recorded as 200, while the AQI for Colombo stood at 185. In addition, the air quality index for Jaffna was 175, while in Gaul it was 164.
Yes, depending on the wind pattern to the Sri Lanka, normally once the winds in this season, monsoon period, winds are coming from the northeast directions, and due to this cyclone system, you can see here also due to the cyclone system, the winds are now flowing from the Indian side to Sri Lanka all over the country. The levels winds are going through the country. So we know the Indian side there are some air pollution situation. Those pollutants, especially small particulates like PM 2.5 particulates, are coming from India side to Sri Lanka. Then it's spread all over the country, and especially in urban areas, we have look at that the high pollution levels. Normally levels are 2 times higher than our standard testing. All urban area people, maybe Jaffna, Vaunia, Putlam, Kandy, Kegol, then Kurunegala, Colombo, like those all urbanized area people has to be concerned about this and take precautions to protect with this situation.
What are the negative effects the smog has on the human body?
When we breathe, in addition to the clean air, harmful elements like carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide and ozone particles enter the lungs. That will lead to coughing, fever and a cold. Germs too will enter the body, just like influenza, which is spreading these days. Therefore, it will affect the lungs, especially to those with respiratory issues.
Health professionals say that to protect ourselves from this situation, it is better to wear a mask to minimize the particles from entering the body when breathing. In addition, unnecessary movement should also be avoided.
Colombo looked very gloomy today when it was covered with smog. In most parts of the country, chilly weather was experienced. The Met Department said that the cyclonic storm Mandaus in the Bay of Bengal is the cause for this. It is very likely to move west-northwestwards and cross North Tamil Nadu, Puducherry and South Andhra Pradesh coast over southwest Bay of Bengal. Therefore, this situation will cease by tomorrow night.
This cyclonic storm is moving further towards India. It is moving around 200 to 300 kilometers near north and east coast of Sri Lanka. We can expect more rain and strong wind conditions, and intermittent showers are expected in the northern province with heavy rainfall exceeding 100 millimeters at some places.
The impact of the cyclone affected the lives of people in many parts of Sri Lanka. A 55-year-old father of 2 died after a tree fell onto him in Udupussal Lava. A feeble man died after a tree fell onto a 3-wheeler in the Ragal area. Gale winds that swept across Balangoda on Wednesday night damaged a house in Vellavala. 2 people who were asleep at the time were injured and hospitalized. There's a possibility of swell waves of about 2.5 to 3.5 meters being experienced in the sea areas of the coast extending from Kankasanthurei to Pothuil via Trincomalee and Batticaloa. Naval and fishing communities are advised not to venture into the deep and shallow sea areas of the coast extending from Mannar to Pothuil via Kankasanthurei, Trincomalee and Batticaloa and the southwest Bay of Bengal until further notice. Fishing and naval communities are requested to be attentive to future forecasts issued by the Met Department in this regard.
Now, low temperatures were reported throughout the country. Accordingly, the following cities reported concerning minimum temperatures. Accordingly, Colombo district reported a minimum temperature of 24 degrees Celsius, Kandy 17 degrees Celsius, Galle 24 degrees Celsius, Nuwara 10 degrees Celsius, and the Jaffna district reported a minimum temperature of 24 degrees Celsius. Now, moving on with the news, we are now joined by Newsfirst's Shehan Ranatunga with more details on the weather.
Anyone in Colombo today would be excused for thinking that they were up in the hill country or in Nuwara because it's been unusually cold for most of today. Temperatures have been in the mid-20s, and according to the weather forecasts, we expect that this weather pattern may continue for some time. This was the case from early this morning, even during the afternoons, rather unusual cold weather. As I said, much like as if you were in Kandy or Nuwara. Some might say this is because of the Christmas season, but we certainly hope that the weather improves quickly. For the Newsfirst team from Colombo, I'm Shehan Ranatunga.
The economic crisis in particular has left millions helpless and destitute. But with the support of some kind-hearted benefactors from around the world, Gammadda as a movement is striving to support the masses and overcome their woes this Christmas.
The campaign launched by Gammadda to distribute dry rations among the people who are in dire need to help them overcome the soaring cost of living continued on Thursday as well. Although Christmas is drawing closer, there is hardly anything for most Sri Lankans to celebrate, and there are many families in urban, suburban and rural Sri Lanka who are unable to enjoy the season owing to the prevailing crisis. Dry rations were distributed to selected families in the Hampana 3rd Mile Post area in Kandy on Thursday. This program, which has been carried out with your support, will be carried out during the month of December, covering the entire island.
News First with the people.
A trusted place for your fixed deposit. Valuable FD, 25% for 2 months, 25.5% for 4 months. Valuable FD, the symbol of stability.
Transparency International calls for Sri Lanka to be compensated for the loss of millions of dollars in the Airbus bribery scandal.
Transparency International Sri Lanka has called for Sri Lanka to be compensated by the giant aircraft manufacturer Airbus, which 2 years ago pleaded guilty to charges of carrying out the largest international bribery operation ever. This included revelations that Airbus had paid millions of dollars to the CEO of Sri Lankan Airlines to secure orders for Airbus aircraft. Incredibly, the government of Sri Lanka has not made any concrete effort to seek compensation for the losses incurred by the tax-paying citizens of Sri Lanka, which had been squandered through the corruption of officials at the national carrier and Airbus. TISL Executive Director Asok Obesekara said, given that the evidence now shows that corruption was involved in the procurement process, it is imperative that action is taken both internationally and locally to ensure that Airbus and its agents are held accountable for losses inflicted on Sri Lanka. The 10 brand new Airbus A350 aircraft that were ordered were found to be far too expensive and totally unsuitable for Sri Lankan Airlines operations, and the order was cancelled. But Sri Lankan Airlines was forced to pay approximately $100 million for the cancellation. The CEO of Sri Lankan Airlines, Kapila Chandrasena, who was appointed during the presidency of President Mahinda Rajapaksa, was named by Sri Lanka's CID in court documents as having allegedly receiving $2 million to a Singapore bank account of a company named Biz Solutions which was registered in Brunei under the name of his wife Priyanka Vijayanayaka. Police said the money had then been transferred to a bank account in Australia, which was under the name of Chandrasena. He has been since released on bail. Following a 4-year-long investigation by the criminal investigators in the United States, United Kingdom and France, Airbus in 2020 agreed to pay a fine of $3.9 billion to the government of those 3 countries. Airbus also handed over documents to detectives that proved that massive bribes had been paid to airline officials in several countries. This include offering a bribe of $16 million to officials of Sri Lankan Airlines, of which $2 million had been paid for the ordering of the aircraft.
And that's a wrap of primetime news here on TV1 for tonight. As always, thank you for watching. Stay safe, take care, and have a good night.